Okay, I'm live. Just sent out the link to Dave, and he should be joining us shortly. In the meantime, I see there's already a few people there, and thanks for those of you who have shown up already. Let's just get into the chat and see what you folks are saying. So Jesus Gonzalez heard Russia made 8 surgical strikes in Ukraine, hitting secret U.S. biolabs. Any truth to it, you think, or just more? I actually heard that too. I got that in my stream on Twitter and a couple places, a couple social media platforms. I seen that being reported, and to be honest with you, I can't really offer any more informed knowledge than you would have in terms of that, because I've been kind of busy getting ready for the conversation I've been having today. I'm going to be having today with Dave, but yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, is it possible? This is one part where I don't feel comfortable, as you folks probably are familiar with. I don't feel comfortable talking about things that I just don't have any genuine knowledge about. I feel really uncomfortable trying to, because I recognize people listen to other people's perspectives, and they take, a lot of times people take that stuff to heart, which is why I hold myself to a fairly high bar, a fairly high standard in terms of what, if I don't know, I'm humble enough just to say I don't know. I wish I could help you, Jesus, there, but be honest with you, I don't know. Anyways, moving on to the next one we got here. Tar Sand Turkey. That's quite the handle. Russia went on high nuclear alert. Now, I did see that was even reported by a couple of the people in the establishment. So yes. Well, I mean, the nuclear deterrent, I mean, that's the thing. It is there, but it's also one of those things where when you're talking about nuclear deterrence, it's that mad, right? Mutually assured destruction, right? I mean, it's basically like 2 guys standing in front of each other, both holding 50 cal right, handguns to each other's foreheads, right? And they both have identical reaction times, right? It probably won't work out well, right? So it's not a really good situation. But actually, that's one thing about nuclear capabilities is it is, if there's one thing that we did see take place during the entire run up, during the Cold War era, is in with a lot of crazy stuff that was taking place, a lot of geopolitical positioning and strategic maneuvers, like, I mean, putting, missiles in Cuba, like really close to, mainland America, right? So a lot of tensions during those times, during those decades. But yeah, like I said, the mutually assured destruction of the nuclear arsenals that the major powers have, well, at least, like I say, most people are wise enough that they don't want to destroy themselves and the entire world, right? Because that, yeah, usually doesn't work out good for anybody. But yeah, the nuclear threat, it is a thing, obviously. When, at what time? At what time? Oh, for the nuclear alert. Okay, Coffee House Theology. Hello, Coffee House Theology. How the heck are you doing today? Like I say, just waiting to see. I just want to make sure that Dave got the link there. Yeah, it should be. I see it. It got sent, anyways. Oh, 7 a.m.ish Alberta time. Okay, that's you guys responding back and forth. The X-22 report. Actually, there was a guy, I believe you're probably talking about a YouTube channel. I remember a YouTube channel, I believe, called X-22 report, if I remember correctly. Anyways, how are you doing today, Auntie Woke? Very nice to see you in the chat as well. Ukraine and Russia are going to have talks soon. Yeah, I actually seen that this morning too, which is, that'd be a great thing, right? Let calmer heads prevail. Let's talk about this stuff, right? Let's try to talk it out. Anyways, I see Dave is there now. I'm going to bring him into the stream, so just give me a sec there, folks.
Hi.
Hey, Dave, how you doing this morning? Or today, this afternoon, I should say.
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. Yeah, actually, I had to just answering a couple of the comments there in the chat, and people are already, of course, they're the typical people that join the streams, pretty well informed, anyways. But talking about the stuff about the nuclear heightened alert,
right?
And what was the other one here? We had, yeah, I heard this too. I don't know if you have any information on this, Dave, but about Russia and the strategic or surgical strikes in Ukraine that were or supposedly allegedly hit some U.S. biolabs. I might answer that was I just don't know, and I really don't. So I don't know if you have any information to that Chad, do you?
Zero information, and I wouldn't speculate either way. It's possible.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I changed my funky hairstyle from the other one because it looked remarkably like an Austrian corporal that you might know from the World War II era. Who's, if there is a hell, he's probably floating around there. So I changed it up for you.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, like I was saying, I'm glad you actually answered that question that way, because I'm the same way. If I'm not privy to specific facts or information, I don't feel comfortable offering an opinion on it. So, and I'm glad you're the same way, because the last thing I want to do, and I'm sure you're the same way, is misinform or misrepresent facts to people, especially when you're talking about something as grave as a situation where you're talking, actual genuine conflict where people are actually dying. I don't want to get into that stuff. Don't want to play games. Don't want to play sides. We're just here to discuss some things. And Dave reached out to me because obviously there's some things as it pertains to Russia and Putin that he wanted to get off his chest. And I'm always willing to be the sounding board and to offer my perspective and anything that at least I can offer an informed opinion on. So I don't know where you want to start there, Dave, but you go right ahead there, man.
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to say is I want to go back to your point about not speaking about things where I know not what I speak. And if you're a libertarian and you believe in the non-aggression principle, then by spreading misinformation or spreading disinformation, that's a form of information aggression. Right. That's like lying to somebody about life. Stick your finger in the socket, it'll be fine. that sort of mentality. So yeah, I'm not going to over ski my ski tips and say things that I don't know about. And really, it distracts from stuff that I might know about. So I have a slideshow and I don't know how to share it. You're going to have to, this is where I'm ignorant.
Okay. So that's the thing. I haven't really been on the other side of one of these with StreamYards and all the new features yet. So I kind of have to go by what I see on my screen, but on the bottom, do you see do you have like a mute, stop cam setting, share, invite, stuff like that on the bottom of your screen? On the StreamYards app. So the share, if you click on that and it shows a TV screen share.
Yeah.
You see that? Click on that.
Yeah.
And then you got slides, which is a new one, extra camera. Actually, the extra camera is something I'm going to start trying here soon. And then there's, of course, if you just want to share video files and then the share screen. But if you have a slide set up, then I would suggest you use that slide option, and then it'll probably allow you to get into your computer and do your presentation, I would imagine.
My browser is not set up to help you at all. So it's refusing to allow me to share anything. So I'll start talking while I'm meandering through the options I've got. Okay, so Russia starts a surprise attack.
Hey Dave, before you continue on, if there's another way you could do it now. So when you click on that share, does it not give you the ability to do the share screen option, which would be the one at the very bottom?
Yeah, it says my browser's blocked it. So slides, graphs. Oh, from my computer. Okay, wait. Okay, got it.
Right.
Okay, so
if you wanted to share like a browser or something from your browser, like an open window, then you have to use the bottom one, which is called share screen. And then when you click on that, it gives you 3 different options to share the entire screen or just an open tab kind of deal.
Okay, it's telling me that I can only upload 2 slide decks. Okay, sorry about this, everybody. I can garbage these old ones. Okay. We worry about a future where machines take over, but we can't even turn them on and off.
Sorry, I was just reading the Gonzalez comment there. What'd you say, Dave? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Gonzalez's comment. What I was saying, we worry about the robot overlords that are going to kill us all. But we can't even get PowerPoint to boot up on the first, 6th, or 7th try. I was talking to people this morning about stupid autocorrect. My God,
Mm.
Autocorrect makes me look about 20 IQ points lower. So
Yeah.
so I've got slide one. I don't know how
Yeah.
to. So
Actually, yeah, I read an article. I don't know if it was TechCrunch or one of those Gizmodo or one of those, but it's basically like, yeah, we're a ways off before we have to truly worry about artificial intelligence.
yes, we are, and I can tell you, we were. Sorry, I'm trying to get this stupid thing slides, and it says Ukraine attack.
I actually see it on the background of the screen. So you got something going on there, Dave. I think all you would have to do at this point is bring it on. Do you have the ability, or else I could probably click? I can add it to the stream right now. It gives me the option.
Please,
as well.
Please help
Okay.
Me.
Okay,
Please,
no problem.
Listen, I'm an electrical engineer that knows nothing about telephones.
It's all good.
Back in the old days, we call it POTS, POTS.
Right.
Plain old telephone system. Okay, perfect. Here's my slides. Okay. Were there any? Now that you look like a Cossack, why? Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, or Jesus. I appreciate that. Yes. I was planning to present slides and not myself, so let's just put it at that. Okay, so we're going to talk about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Let's start there, and let's step back one step and go. There are two parties involved. One is the nation of Russia, and the second one is the nation of Ukraine. Now, I do this sort of pedantically because we have to understand people start throwing in stuff that doesn't make any sense. And when you're talking about these kinds of things, you must make sure you know who you're talking about, honestly. People are talking about NATO, what are we going to do, and all that sort of stuff. Nobody has declared war from Germany, USA, and so on and so forth. So let's put that all aside and let's just talk about Ukraine, a nation with a population of about 40 million people, and Russia with and I don't know, maybe somebody knows more than I do about this stuff, but 300 million people are in Russia. Okay, so an overwhelming force.
Well, actually, right here, I just searched, and it actually shows that there's 145,805,947 people.
Okay, so a 3-to-1 population.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's take another back step. We're going to go back 2 steps in time. We're going to talk about very quickly, because a lot of times, actually, we could go back 3 steps and start. Part of the problem that is happening right now has to do with how World War II ended. That's a fact. Okay, let's put that fact there. Now let's go 1 time step forward and go to what I've been mentioning on my Twitter feed, Demon Dave, the Budapest Memorandum. So at the end of the Cold War, they call it Russia versus the USA. The nation of Ukraine was the 3rd largest nuclear power. They had in their possession from the old Soviet stock, I think it's 1,000 nuclear missiles, but serious. And so the security thinking in the West was concerned about rogue missiles. So some general or something who hasn't been paid or is doing stuff on the side might give a nuclear weapon to jihadis. Okay, so they set about. So ironically, this becomes a blame Bill Clinton again for yet another problem in today's world. So we talk about China and why China is strip mining jobs from the West. Bill Clinton was the one that negotiated most favored nation trading status for China. And it was George Bush II that ratified it. So anyways, so there was a problem. You had Ukraine, which was now a separate country, having the 2nd largest or 3rd largest nuclear weapon stockpile strategic weapons, nukes are bad, and they had to come to an agreement. And the UK, the US, and Russia all guaranteed the national integrity of the Ukraine. And all three of those nations, just the US, just the UK, and just Russia, promised to defend that country. Okay, so Ukraine agrees, ratifies this, gives up their stockpile of weapons. The weapons go to Russia, they're destroyed, or they're put into the Russian arsenal. I don't know. But the point is that they were promised something. And the actors were the UK, the US, and Russia. Okay, so fast forward to 2014. Obama, Biden are in the White House, and there is a so I'm looking at the side comments. Anti woke Dave, you were losing me. Sorry. What don't I understand? Haven't I explained anti woke?
I would just continue on with your
okay, she'll pop some words up here. Okay, so this is the backdrop. So you've got a nation of roughly 40 million people who have been guaranteed the major powers around them. So the UK, the US, and Russia are all UN Security Council members. Those are the big five. China and
Russia.
China and Russia, US, UK. Right. Permanent members of the UN Security Council. The ones with all the nukes, the ones with the biggest militaries, the guys that can get away with anything because they can all veto. All right. Mm-hmm. So then fast forward to one time step before where we're at now, and we're in 2014. There's a guy named Yushchenko, or can't remember exactly what his name is. Sorry about that. But he is pro-Russia.
That Petro Poroshenko guy is?
I'm not sure. But he's a pro-Russian politician.
Right.
And now it's very possible that it was a color revolution funded or supported by the USA, by the CIA, by whatever. Point being that they overthrew the government, and a pro-Western government was installed. And the Ukrainian president at the time fled to Russia. Okay, so at that point, the US was actively or passively, maybe it's just promises between politicians, interfering in the internal politics of the Ukraine, promising them whatever. And we assume that it was membership in NATO. So put yourself in the shoes of Putin in 2014. He has watched Poland, Lithuania, Estonia, all these Baltic states quietly flip from pro-Russia to anti-Russia, to then Partnership for Peace, and then NATO countries. Mm-hmm. If you go back to the end of the Cold War, the breakup of the USSR, Putin claims, and it's probably true. Why I say that? Because our politicians in 1991 wouldn't give a shit about what happened in politics 20 years in the future, because they'll be gone by then. So nobody will remember their names when all is said and done. But the Soviet Union unit was concerned that all of these nations would be turned around and used as cannon fodder in an invasion east towards Moscow. Okay, that was the concern. Okay, we're breaking up, we're becoming all these countries, but we don't want you to expand east. Well, NATO expanded east, which was against what Putin and Gorbachev and whoever else was in charge was promised. Okay, so that is established fact. And if you go back,
Yep.
I'm not completely full of BS what I'm talking about.
No, I'm actually vaguely familiar with all that, and that sounds.
Yeah, I was around there too, but I was busy doing other stuff like getting drunk and finishing engineering school and stuff. So, all right. So this is the political backdrop. You've got promises made, promises kept, and promises broken. And you have Ukraine, which was assured protection by Russia, by the UK and the US. So what does Russia do in 2014? Nothing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now fast forward to now. All right. Negotiations between Russia and the Ukraine were going nowhere. In other words, the people that were advising Zelensky, the current president. Hi, Bennett.
Oh no, I'm saying hi to Anna Karika.
Anna Karika. Hi. My hair is crazier today. It'll get crazier as we go along. Okay, so here's where we're at. So, oh shit, where was I at? What was I talking about? I have 4 trains of thought. So, oh yes, 2014 Zelensky. Zelensky is being told in his ear, "Don't worry, we'll make you part of NATO," all that sort of stuff. The Americans are on our side. In fact, there was a clip on Twitter of a Ukrainian general talking with Russian soldiers on a bridge somewhere. He's running out. He's telling his guys to shut up, stop doing what they're doing, and he goes out and he's like waving these guys down, and these are like conscript soldiers, whatever. And in the background, one of the soldiers yells, and of course, I'm just reading the translation, "The USA is with us." So people within the territorial confines, sorry, I'll make sure I don't echo. The people within the territorial confines of the Ukraine believe the USA is literally going to be with them. All right, so why is that important? Okay, well, you've got Putin complaining that the Ukraine is full of Nazis. And for the record, I just called somebody a moron because he said the right-wing Nazis. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
National Socialist, Nazi, N-A-Z-I, stands for National Socialist. They were left-wing, they were socialists, they were fascists. Yeah. Okay. So this hardline movement, we would call it like the war hawks. And there was I tweeted out this morning, pardon me, I tweeted out this morning this link to a video where a guy in 2015, a professor, Mearshire, explains why we are guilty of wrecking the Ukraine, or we will wreck the Ukraine by our reckless actions. And he talks about that that we are setting them up, we are pushing them down the primrose path, promising all this sort of stuff. And of course, our population isn't paying attention, isn't seeing where all these influences are coming from. So this hardline believes to some degree that eventually the US is going to come and save us. So as a Russian diplomat, you're kind of stuck because the other side refuses to budge. Why? Because Uncle Sam is around the corner. So when you listen to Putin's speech, and they talk a lot about how he's sort of crazy and it doesn't make a lot of sense, there are nuggets of truth. There is blame from the West in the grievances of Russia. Full end statement right there. It's true. We have caused part of this problem. So he was left, imagine you're Putin. He's left with 2 options. At some point, he has to stop diplomacy and start something else. And it's wintertime. And wintertime, as I'm going to slow in the slides, wintertime ends. So he has to do it. What he's doing, he says we a lot. He says Bolshevism has issues. Well, okay, perhaps. Bolshevism has been an issue. Yes. There, socialism, this Professor Mearshire points out that a neocon and a neoliberal are basically, he called them Tweedledee and Tweedledum. When it comes to sort of financial policy, they're different. When it comes to being hawks, they both like dropping bombs overseas. Right. Okay. So Putin is stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as he's concerned. And as will become clear as I start heading down the path here, it all has to do with natural gas and pipelines. So Ukraine, not only is it a sovereign nation that he can't push around, Putin can't push around, it also controls the largest pipeline supply sending Russian gas into the consumers in Europe. Okay, let's go to the second slide. Do you know how to do that? Or
yeah, there we go.
Perfect. Okay, so that's a blow up. When you're giving a military briefing, you do a situation. You make sure your fingers are clean so nobody sees your dirty fingers. You use a pen and you point at spots. Okay, so let's situate ourselves. As you look at this map, the Ukraine is the part of territory below that blue river going east to west. Okay, the red dots are where the bad guys are if you're Ukrainian, all around the circle. And really, 75% of the circumference of Ukraine is surrounded by enemies from their perspective. Okay, and they talk about the military numbers in here. What I found alarming was that the Russians had only committed 60,000 troops to this attack. And I'll explain why that's important later. Okay, next, Biden wants to control the taps. Well, okay, that's a very good point, Matt Duga, that Donald Trump, you'll see he was there standing with, Donald Trump at a table with Jens Stoltenberg, the ex-Norwegian prime minister, the leader of NATO, and explaining to him, how is it possible that Germany wants me, the president of the United States, to defend them, tooth and nail, all the blood and treasure, while at the same time they get their majority of their natural gas from Russia, their enemy that we're supposed to be defending them from. And why wouldn't you buy my natural gas and not fund your enemy? Point blank. President Trump was right. And the Europeans did nothing about changing this problem. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this, I'm going to talk about a military maneuver. It's called a flanking maneuver, but I'm going to use a simple analogy that everyone can understand. Okay. In this slide, everyone's had to cut a piece of meat on a board. You have something you want to bisect, cut in half, and you have a knife. You fix the meat to the board. You take your knife and you stab it into what you're trying to do, what you're trying to cut. You go from one side to the other and cut it clean, and then that segments that off from the rest. Okay? Everyone's got that. I'm being pedantic here, but everyone's got that. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the military version of that. So in the middle, it says salient. So if you have two lines of fighters, you've got enemy forces attacking each other. From time to time, the boundaries flex like this, right? One pushes forward, and the it's called the FLOT, forward line of own troops, is here, and then we get counterattacked, and it's here, and then back and forth. So in a war, one of the tactics to defeat your enemy, if you call the blue arrows the friendly forces and the red arrows the enemy forces, you use something like a flanking attack from one side across the line in behind troops that are already engaged at the front, and you drive through and you link up on the other side. Okay, that is called a flanking maneuver. And if you have two forces, I'm going to put my fingers in, if you have two forces working from two sides and they come together and meet and separate out that salient, that's called a pincer move. Okay, and if you have what Russia is doing, it's a multi-pronged attack. And I'll explain why this is a big blunder. So basically, like you take your troops, you punch a hole through the other guy's lines, and you turn all of them so that they're all surrounded. And they realize it doesn't matter if we kill guys going forward. All our gasoline, all our diesel, all our ammo, right? Our air support, everything is way back there. And we're surrounded. And if you want to demoralize and make troops give up, you take away everything that can sustain them. Okay, next slide. So why is this important? This is a war map from the beginning of World War II. And I'll draw your attention to the top of the screen center. And it's the 19 Panzer Corps of Guderian. So the three arrows pointing down from that little black symbol are the German advances along different roads through difficult territory in the Ardennes forest towards the French lines. And if you go down from that to the bottom, 21 Corps is basically where the French retreated to and held a defensive line. So what happened in the first battle of World War II in Europe is the tank forces punched through the British Expeditionary Force lines, and I've drawn two blue arrows to roughly show where they were at the beginning of the battle. Okay, and Guderian, who was one of the best generals the Nazis, the Wehrmacht ever had, he was famous for his Spartan philosophy. His command center for an entire army was his tank with a big G on it. That's it. You want the man, he's over there in the tank that says G. Okay. But he understood tank warfare very well. Okay. So, and remember, the generals that had survived World War I were the people that spent World War I bogged down in trench fighting, right, for meters on the Western Front. And that's exactly where this happened. But the Germans, they planned it out. They knew what they were doing, and they had tank forces ready to go. So when they punched through the British and French lines, they didn't drive straight to Paris. They turned right, they turned west, and they drove as fast as they could for the ocean. Okay? With me so far?
Yeah.
Why was that?
I'm still trying to figure it if I can read in half of the. My eyes are not great. I need a pair of glasses.
Don't worry about all the crap. Just look at all the black arrows. They go into the middle. They're attacking, and then suddenly, those long arrows pointing to the west, pointing to your left. That's where they punched through and drove through open territory. What they did is they punched through the line, and then they drove. They punched right through the supplies, and they drove to the ocean. And what that did is all the forces up in the top left corner, right? All the British Expeditionary Forces were now surrounded. And they had the ocean to their back. And what happened there? Dunkirk. They retreated. They lost their stuff. They lost their tanks, they lost their trucks, they lost their howitzers. They were being beaten back so badly they could never form a line and defend themselves. Well, they actually didn't have Navy support at the time because the Luftwaffe outnumbered the British fighters. Remember, the Americans weren't in the war then. So the Allies did not have air superiority over the battlefield. And that was another reason why they lost. But the idea was you punch through a line, you drive straight to some important feature, and all the forces that you have surrounded are most likely going to surrender because they've got nothing left. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, so is that clear? Does anyone have any questions about that? This is a flanking move. It's right. Blitzkrieg. It's lightning more. You punch through and you drive. Right. No questions?
No, good so far.
No? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a map of the Ukraine. Yes, exactly. They cut the supply lines and the support lines. They cut the logistics. So it doesn't matter how brave your soldiers are. If they run out of bullets,
yeah,
right, they're down to rocks. Okay, so let's look quickly at this. Is obviously the light tan color is the Ukraine, and Kiev or Kyiv is the star, sort of in the top middle of the map. And you notice there's a green, there's a blue lake system that goes from Kyiv, goes down and towards the east, towards Russia, and then zigzags back towards Odessa, those lakes. I'll talk about them later. Okay, so here we're situated. This is the ground that Russia is invading. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is what he did. Starting 3-4 days ago, when shit went down, he assaulted, he invaded, he attacked in a multi-pronged attack. Okay, so he had forces in Crimea. If you look at the bottom red arrow, he had forces down in Sevastopol, punch up from that little peninsula. He had forces either from Donetsk or from Russia proper, the next red arrow over, punching in along the top of the Sea of Azov. He had another attack, which was from basically the middle of the Russian lines, moving towards Kharkiv. And if you hear the news today, Kharkiv is what do you call that? It's actually in the middle of a battle right now. Okay, so he's punching to try and get all the forces that are there. So here's the thing. Oh, and then the last arrow. Sorry, the last arrow is the major one. He's pulling out his glasses. Okay. Yeah, you're old like me when you need your glasses. So
yeah, I just got to watch those stupid lights I got there. They get caught in the lenses there, and it look pretty freaky actually at times.
Oh yeah, well you look at my hair. Come on, no problem. Okay, so the last arrow and the major one that we're all hearing about because it's attacking Kyiv, is the one coming from Belarus, and obviously the reason why that was chosen is that is the shortest distance between Russian friendly territory and the enemy capital. And if you know anything about Clausewitz, and he talks about the Schwerpunkt, the center of gravity. When you want to win a war, you attack the center of your enemy's gravity. You attack the most important thing to them. And the Putin plan says that Kyiv is the key to the entire region. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, let me go back to the rivers and lakes. I've circled the two areas where there are. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but when you look at a map, and it's a very high scale map, like 50,000, 1 to 50,000, 1 to 250,000, like big scale like this. Like this is a country that's like 10, 12 hours to drive at 100 kilometers an hour. This is a big piece of land. When you start seeing a blue river or lake, and it's more than 1 pixel wide, That means it's a big freaking lake or a
Yep.
big river. It is, wide.
Yeah.
It is treacherous, maybe fast currents. It's not insignificant. Why is that interesting? Why is that important? Well, if you go back and watch the old World War II movies, what was the one feature of ground that they desperately wanted to either hold or take away from the other guys? It was bridges. It was bridges.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Operation Market Garden was an attack with airborne forces capturing bridges along the path. Thank you. Good game, all in. Yes, it was bridges, precisely. You get a gold star today. So imagine that these two, the Dnieper Lake and river system is a very large obstacle in and of itself. That means the bridges over that span are the things that stop you from lightning war. They stop you from winning quickly, whether you hold them or not. And also, if you look at it, it looks like what he's trying to do is segment, like he's trying to eat half of Ukraine whole. And he's moving so that he can use that that river and lake system as a defensive line. And that's tactically very smart. But here's the problem. Can we go back to the Guderian one? Let's go back a couple. Perfect. Okay. When Guderian and the Germans broke through, there was no lake, there was no river, and there was no major bridge as the only way across from one side to the other. They were able to drive down roads, right? They don't need big roads. They can even just use your driveway size road, one at a time, driving tank after tank after tank to get around. Because there is no natural obstacle, it made it a lot quicker to drive faster and get farther away than the British and the French could understand as it was happening. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if your goal was lightning war, has Putin achieved victory of a lightning war?
No.
Okay, so sorry, hitting your coffee swig there. Can we
No
go
worries.
back?
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so this is where we're at. He is doing a multi-pronged attack, and none of these pincers have met up with each other, right? So if you imagine if you're doing a pincer, you have to have two forces that meet together.
Right.
The problem here is that he has four independent forces, and they are all stuck in the middle of enemy territory, and they are easily, as they call it in military terms, they can easily be blunted and surrounded. So this is a major blunder. I don't know what kind of general would have recommended. Now, I was an Army captain, and when I did my tactics course, I placed third out of the whole course. And the only reason why I use that brag is because that means that there are only two other people that can brag more than I can about tactics.
Don't worry, I'm not one of those Canadians that'll tear you down for having.
That's okay. I have quiet confidence and crazy hair. So what is tactically wrong with this is that if he was trying to achieve a lightning victory, we've knocked you over, give up, and sue for peace on our terms, he has failed miserably. And this is important. It's important because it means the entire scope of what he's forcing people to do is more suffering, more misery, more death, more destruction than he might have envisioned. In his head, he was thinking, this will be over in 5 minutes. I'll capture Zelensky, maybe execute him, or I'll get him to sign a piece of paper and I'll take half of Ukraine. Okay, can we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So as a tactician, it is your job to not only plan out your move, but to understand what the other guy is doing as well. So as a tactician, you have to go, okay, if I was in his shoes and I had these things, this is what I would do. if I was the general of the Russian forces, this is what I would have done. And it's kind of the same thing as they did, but it's far better, and I'll explain why. The major force, the big red arrow that's sort of running past Kyiv, is not trying to take an entire city of 3 million people. You punch through the lines from near Chernobyl, and you drive down the east side of the Dnieper and those lakes towards the Luhansk and Donetsk pockets of resistance, right?
Which predominantly got a lot of Russia-friendly forces in those areas, correct?
Indeed. But the reason why I do that, so number one, attacking Kyiv makes zero sense if you're trying to just get this over with in 3 days, right? Because it's clearly not taking more than, it's taking much more time and costing more. But if you did this and bypassed it, you would be able, if you look above that line towards the Russia, and I'm gonna butcher these names. I'm even gonna have to take my glasses off. Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv. Okay, so all the Ukrainian forces, and there's probably a lot that were along the line of the biggest part of the Russian border, would have been surrounded. Now, this one, I probably would have assigned 100,000 men to, because this is the major push. In the south, I would have, bye-bye deep state Nazis, U.S. can Nazis coming for you next. Okay, so from Sevastopol, I would have punched up in the other direction, because obviously Ukrainian forces are concentrated along the Russian border. And there are many places along the river that you can stop and defend everything coming across. So obviously, the area around Odessa and Kherson are lower priority for defense. So they don't have a lot of stuff. So you knew that was going to be a cakewalk. But remember, can we go back a slide?
Yep.
Thank you. He's not pushing the forces from Sevastopol, from Crimea, to link up to the east. He's trying to push them all the way to Kyiv, right? Mm-hmm. He's trying to cross all these places with bridges. And there was another story of some brave sapper, some brave engineer that blew up a bridge by himself. He literally went out there, set the charges, and blew it up, because there was no way he was going to get back to friendly lines. And they were crediting his bravery. So that's all it would take to stop an offensive attack from proceeding towards the center of the Ukraine. From there, can we go down a slide? Thank you. So in my scenario, I would have advised one advance, one big push from Belarusia, pushing southeast, and one big push from Crimea, pushing northeast. And so those two become the pincers that can connect together and surround and trap all the forces on that side. And also, sorry, you were going to say something?
No.
Okay. So many answers. Where the heck is Biden? So then what you would find is that this war would have been over by now. You bypass cities. Cities are dangerous, and we'll get to that next. Like they are danger from every side. They are supremely dangerous. And whenever you go into a city with mechanized forces, they are always at a disadvantage. It doesn't matter how much armor you have. If you can't actually aim your gun and shoot at the guy at the 15th level window, you're dead from his rocket, no matter what. Okay, so let's go forward. So why would forward a slide.
Okay.
So why would Putin want to do what he did? Here are the key gas pipelines in the Ukraine. Now, if you notice, you look at Kyiv, there's a huge gas pipeline there. Mm-hmm. There's if you go south, there's like 2, 3, 4 in the center of the country. And there's one from the Crimean area that links up, and it looks like a major one that goes to Moldova. So his His actions on the ground tell you exactly where he's going and what he's trying to get. And so why is this all important? Because, war is hell, war is other people, and war is about money. Mm-hmm. Just think of it this way. All the gas, the natural gas that the Russia ships through Ukraine to Western Europe must go through Ukrainian pipelines. So what does that mean? Ukraine, for the luxury of using their pipelines, taxes the crap out of whatever it is you're trying to sell to Europeans, right? And as we said at the beginning, Ukraine is a sovereign state, and they have gotten no headway with diplomacy from the Russian perspective on what's been going on here. So that we'll talk about Nord Stream 2. But Nord Stream 2 is an alternative to all of these pipelines here. Make sense?
Yep.
And Nord Stream 2 doesn't have the Ukrainians taxing the flow of natural gas going west, right? Because it's straight from Russia under the sea and into Western Europe, into Germany or wherever it comes out. So if you looked at his moves, can we go down a slide? If you look at his moves and you go back and look at the pipelines, it's like he's basically heading to cut off 9 or 10 of the major pipelines in the Ukraine. Right? Flip it back and forth.
Yeah. So that would be a pretty important there. And then if you get up into here.
Yeah. Right? He's basically cutting 80 to 90% of their gas pipeline capacity off. So why is he doing this in winter? Like we said, because the Germans have now declared, and Joe Biden has declared, that they shall not start the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. But what happens if Russia controls 80% of Ukrainian pipelines?
That's a big deal. Well, only thing my question though, that immediately off the top of my head, now I know about this pipeline thing, and there's even the ones that were going to be going through Syrian places, which obviously had a direct correlation to the conflict over there as well. But I was just wondering if Russia's intention was solely like, if it was obviously to turn off the gas or to take control of I mean, that would be something that you could easily do from your own country without actually even have to set foot in to these to Ukraine. So obviously there has to be other aspects of it. The gas, having control of the gas for sure definitely makes sense to me, but there has to be other things in terms of the incentives, and I think a lot of the other things that you were beginning to talk about earlier would probably be contributing factors in terms of their history, the geography, NATO, and all that stuff. But yeah, I definitely get you with the pipeline, and that's definitely something that's a key factor in all of these conflicts. And just like you were mentioned earlier, actually oil is one of the most valuable commodities, even more so than, tell you the truth, I love gold. Don't get me wrong, I love my gold. It's nice and shiny. At the end of the day, if you give me the choice of a brick of gold or a barrel of oil or refined gas, and one of them is going to be much more effective at helping me get through life than the other for the most part, right? But the other thing too is that we always got to keep in mind, and lots of other great libertarian minds and thinkers in the past that have pointed out, is actually the most valued commodity on the entire planet for any state actors to overtake is the people of the country, right? That's the most valuable resource. And I believe, obviously Ukraine, and the fact that it is basically, or I don't know if it's still considered or was considered, the breadbasket of Europe. And, you got a lot of very fertile ground. You got a lot of people with some well-educated, advanced ability to at least step into an advanced type of society. I believe that's something that probably plays a key role too. Would you agree on that, or my?
Yeah, I would agree. I've got some points at the end there, but I'll directly quote Russia. Matt Dugas. Russia already controls the pipelines FFS. Okay, Matt, let me take you through it one step at a time. Russian companies have contracts with Ukrainian companies. Ukrainian companies own their own pipelines. What is the one condition where you can get around Russian contracts and Ukrainian companies? War, right? You stand there with a gun and you take it. It doesn't matter that they haven't turned off all the gas to the West. It matters that they can turn off 80% of the gas to the West, right?
Yeah.
And let's get to the point you were talking about. Western democracies, we're fat and lazy, we're happy, we're prosperous, but we don't like to be cold. And all those countries to the West, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, they're all democracies. So if Russia had crushed the Ukraine in a mighty fit right now and had won and had locked their forces together, they could turn off all the gas tomorrow to justify what they're doing. And then when the people in Europe are cold and complaining about the $900 gas bill they had to pay, and they're poor and they can't do it, they would be the ones telling their democratic leaders to stop picking on Russia or turn on the Nord Stream 2, right? He's put our people, the plan was to set the Western people against their own leaders. Okay, let's go down a slide. Yeah, they can shut the wells, Matt, but
can I just say something there real quick? Not as necessarily this, but it just, once again, it harkens me back to, once again, more great minds of the past who have pointed out and articulated how important it is, and founding fathers of the U.S., just a few of them, about this, getting rid of and not entering into these entangling alliances and just freely trading. And this is the other aspect too of when you're talking about free trade or these agreements, and China's another area, as well as obviously Russia now. But if you're actually dealing with, if you're going to have anything remotely into anything resembling free trade, but that's the problem with the West, is we're quite, or not we, but the Western powers that be, are quite hypocritical in the fact that there is no incentive for a private business. It's massively expensive. Private businesses don't have entire standing armies. Standing armies are quite expensive. There's no incentive for any private business, to do any of these crazy things, to amass amounts of control over resources that, like I say, the expenditures a lot of time would exceed what you would actually benefit on the back end of it, if it wasn't for the fact that you can economically or socially enslave people to make up for the difference.
And risk. Like, you as the private citizen building your own pipeline, you take all the risk, and the government can squash you for no reason.
Yeah, because to me, I mean, when I look at this, and like I say, I take no position in terms of defending Russia, Ukraine, or Canada, or the U.S. for that matter, in terms when you're talking about governments, right? But what I do recognize is that we're all suffering the same consequences of the state having so much control and this cozy relationship with these big corporations and businesses that have so much control over our natural resources, right? This is the problem with this kind of fascistic kind of model we have today, is there's no direct control in terms of the communist or the socialist model of the past, but it's basically inadvertent control by policy or procedure. And then that's the part where, like I say, where the state is dictating control, and to the point where, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I even hear people talking today, well, let's send them, since Russia is doing this with Ukraine, well, let's make sure we're getting as much of our oil and gas, which, once again, to me, it's, I don't sit down and think of things in the central planning model. To me, in that manner, it would be what would be most beneficial and efficient for market participants when you're talking about places such as Europe, right? Obviously, it makes sense for a country like Russia to be a provider of a lot of natural gas and oil for Europe. It's literally in their backyard, right? Just like Canada, to be a provider. We could help with the U.S., our American counterparts in the South, who are quite, voracious in their consumption, to the point where now with Biden and cutting off Keystone XL, they're back under the fact that you have to import. U.S. for a little while, for a short time, was actually exporting oil and not really necessarily having to import. But here we are, like I say, Canada could be providing, and it could reduce so much conflict, not just conflict, because at least we're, neighbors. And if we fall under the same, that's the thing about Canada and the U.S., at least historically, is we have basically the same kind of principles in terms of trade and agreements and stuff that historically, whereas, what's to suggest that we should, right, make it, push Russia out of the fact, because that's the other thing too. You're thinking you're going to punish Russia, but I tell you, this is the problem when people are thinking in this way and they're not putting enough of their thought process long enough into thinking about it. Is, what you're talking about, the people, whether you're talking about Ukrainians or Russians, forget about, government conflicts with each other. That's something, of course, right? Control freaks are control freaks, sociopaths are sociopaths. But what about, like I say, the people of Russia or Ukraine? No matter what people are touting or supporting these days, because they feel, and you're seeing it today, it's happening basically along those political divided lines again, is where people are all lining up to support Ukraine, and they're looking at, is my team supporting them? Rather than, once again, rather than playing this left-right game, is think about the fact that no matter who you're talking about in terms of these conflicts, is people are going to suffer tremendously here. And
Yes.
what we really want to get back to at some point in time, and what the West really has to do, is just like me, Dave, if I wanted to trade with you, I would make sure at the very least that not only did we sign a nice secure contract, but I was assured that the minute I turn my back, you're not going to be breaking in my warehouse and stealing all my goods, right? So,
Yeah.
or enslaving entire populations of people to garn or game the system. This is the problem with, and it goes back to even bringing countries like China into the WTO. And this is the problem, like I say, which is why free trade and not getting into these entangling alliances were very wise and prudent things that the founding fathers of the U.S. talked about. And this was a couple hundred years ago. So it should be something that we should all not just be privy to, but should be really thinking about in depth today.
Yeah. Let's bring another fact in. Who are the people in Russia that own the majority of the shares in those natural gas companies? Are they the people? Are they you and me investors?
No, the oligarchs.
The oligarchs.
Yeah.
The oligarchs. The
Exactly.
oligarchs are taking a haircut on what they pay to Ukraine for the luxury of shipping it freely and safely and securely through Ukrainian territory to their biggest customer, which is why they spent billions and billions of dollars building the Nord Stream 2, right, to get around that problem. So these are all interconnected. But Jesus asked, why did Merkel decide a few years back to even become dependent on Russian gas and oil? Excellent question. I have the perfect answer for you. Green energy is a national security threat. It has been proven, and if you go and look at Germany's own data, that solar panels, windmills are inefficient. We have dumped billions of dollars into the innovation of these things. The sun doesn't shine all night, and the wind doesn't blow all day. And they are transitory. You get a lot, then you get a little. You put out a huge amount of investment in money, in concrete, and steel for these things to take up space on your roof, wherever. And maybe they work well, maybe they don't. So you as the public have been lied to justify cranking billions of dollars into a useless industry with this far off promise that, oh yeah, eventually it'll get up to the efficiency we need. No, we've already spent billions of dollars and proven, like scientifically with data that you can look at, that green energy is not reliable enough. And Australia is the example. They had to build a massive battery pack because their highs and lows in productivity of windmills and solar was so bad, they were losing all their energy before people could use it. So why did Angela Merkel do that? Is because she was on the green energy, Green New Deal, cult, maniacal craziness that we have to turn off every nuclear plant. Why would you turn off a nuclear plant? It doesn't emit CO2. Yes, you emitted CO2 to put it on the ground to make the concrete, but after that, it's nuclear, piles coming together, heating up, heating water, water making steam turning generators. So it is because of the green energy fanaticism, the zealotry and that has caused Europe to be at the threat of Russia turning off the pipes all at once. So, and I'll answer your question the other way, because Matt still doesn't seem to understand what I'm saying, or he just refuses to accept that I'm right and he's wrong. If Russia turned off the tap, who's the aggressor? If Russian companies turn off the tap, if they stop the well output, who's the aggressor? It's Russia. If the pipeline just happens to be blown up as we're driving along in the middle of Ukraine, oops, who's at fault? Oh, well, fog of war. Shit happens. Hey, that's a nice pipeline you got there. You want some C4 on that? Right? So the Russians could say, oh, blame Zelensky and his Nazis. Blame those damn Nazis cut off your oil and gas. Blame them. So come on. Think 3 steps ahead. Okay, let's go 1 step further here.
Okay, I just wanted to cover one comment here just before you continue on there. So keep your train of thought, definitely, because I'm interested in all this stuff. I just, like I say, every once in a while I like to put in my couple of cents here. Anyways, the email from the PMO, because I actually talked about this in a couple of, quite a few tweets and some posts on my Facebook pages and stuff. But from the email from the PMO stated they are giving 3,400 Canadian for NATO use, along with millions of and lethal weapons, plus 1,260 special force. Well, the part that I think that stuck out to me was this, and like I say, the typical, you've seen a lot of them, especially on Twitter, a lot of them blue check mark, and we know who they are, the typical ones that would identify as leftists, of Trudeau liberal supporters, of Democrat supporters, right? Of all these people who railed against, gun ownership or the Second Amendment. And we've definitely got lots of them in Canada, how the constant insults, derision,
protesters, freedom, rights.
Yeah. But to me, the biggest, the most amazing thing, and this should be, especially if you're part of the inner circle of these leftists, and you hear that, no, Canadians, Americans and Canadians at home, your fellow peeps, right? No, they should all be disarmed and just rely. Have faith in your government that no one that'll ever come to any position of authority will ever tyrannize you, will ever do anything to harm you. Just have blind faith in your rulers, while out the other side of their mouth, they're like, oh shit, here, give everyone that's gun that's got, hey, you got a pulse, you breathing? Here, take a gun and go defend yourself. Well, all of a sudden, they're completely pro-gun and pro, Second Amendment now. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing turn to see, to watch, a spectacle to behold, where now the left are out there advocating and touting that you must pick up arms and defend yourself against tyranny. Now, listen, I will say, I haven't even been that bold enough to publicly vocalize or express that, there's other countries that may have tyrannies trying to encroach upon them, where I don't hear anyone of the lefties saying they should be doing that. Hell, they're scared of bouncy castles, for crying out loud.
Here's where this rubber hits the road. Stinger missiles.
Yeah.
You and I, as civilians, cannot own a Stinger missile.
Right.
What are they dropping on the doorstep of Ukraine to a bunch of literally on-the-job training soldiers? Stinger missiles. The Germans. By the way, so they talked about the forces that Canada has committed. Those aren't committed to Ukraine. They're committed to bolster our allies in NATO. But getting back to this, they also
actually, that's a great thing to point out. Actually, that's a really great thing to point out, and I want to add as well, because someone else I was having a conversation with yesterday too is saying about how their Canadians are putting these troops, but that would be to actually put actual Canadian troops on the ground in Ukraine would be a literal act of war. So no, they're in surrounding areas like Lithuania,
Estonia.
Yes, they're definitely not going. Like you said, that would be an instant declaration of war, and I don't think even Trudeau's stupid enough to do that just yet.
No, and in fact, the whole point of collective defense is you cannot attack first. You have to be attacked.
Right.
So they cannot put troops inside the Ukraine, because that would be an offensive act. And then
And Ukraine, and everyone's got to remember the Ukraine is not part of NATO, so there is no
exactly. NATO has zero to do with this.
Right.
The reason why we went back to those time steps, the negative time steps, is so I could say, remember, it was the US and the UK and Russia that guaranteed Ukrainian sovereignty.
Right.
Canada didn't. We weren't involved. We weren't important enough to get at the table.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Anyways, continue on there, Dave.
Okay. So let's go one slide further.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason why his attacks have failed, and apparently they have fired the general in charge of the entire Russian army, Russian military, for failure, is because he tried to take Kyiv. Is because the people on the ground stood up, picked up rifles, or practiced with their cardboard copies and fought back. So, and then worse, the generals on the Russian side, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. They sent conscript soldiers in, like people that forget to gas up their vehicle or don't know how to read a map. No. If you want to do this properly, you send your best.
Yep.
They go tits out, balls out as fast as they can to where their objectives are, and you don't stop for nothing. Because they know that they're in enemy territory all the way along. And I think one of the other big miscalculations from Putin is the people, including Russian speakers, Russian genetics people, are fighting against the Russian army. They want to stay as Ukraine. So I don't think they, Putin was saying we're getting rid of Nazis. This is like Trudeau calling everyone who disagrees with him a Nazi, right? I mean, it's laughable, right? Yeah. So this is what's going on. And okay, let's go to the next slide, so I can finish my diatribe here. Okay, so this is what I think his objectives were, based on what he tried to do and has obviously failed at doing. I predicted he would fail, kind of. I said it was less likely he would win, but why he's losing is he's now willing to talk. Because there's nothing worse for a president of Russia than to lose a war. So he put his career on the line to do what he thought was right. I don't know if he's in his right mind or not, but this might cause Putin to lose his job. And it's very good, because we're also, we can talk about China and Taiwan later. Because obviously the Chinese are looking at how the Western world sees how Putin attacks the Ukraine. And if China gets cut off from SWIFT, that's a big stick. That's not a carrot. Okay, so let's go through these. So what I think Putin's plan is to invade and take half the country, and to make the Russian-speaking side part of a puppet government. That's why he wanted to take Kyiv and failed to do. He wanted to seize all the natural pipelines to use as leverage against Europe. He wanted to punish the Ukrainian people and their future economic prosperity. He's trying to stop them from being who they want to be. And obviously, he's doing it in winter. He has to do it now while people can freeze in Europe. Because if he doesn't do it now, if he can't get it done now, it's never going to happen, right? They're never going to demand their leaders turn on the Nord Stream 2 when it's 60 degrees outside, right? So that's what his objectives are. And the last one, which may or may not be his entire reason for doing this, is obviously if there's a thriving, prosperous democracy right next door. They were showing scenes from downtown Kyiv, and there was a picture, like Under Armour, and there was a picture of, what's that guy that he flinches every time he shoots a gun in the Fast and the Furious movies? Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Okay, if you're an army guy and you watch a combat movie and the guy has a gun, and every time a bullet goes out, he squints his eyes, it means he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Yeah. Because when you start firing a gun on automatic, you have to have your eyes open, because you need to see where your freaking bullets are landing. Why? Because you're responsible for every single bullet that comes out of that gun. Okay, so if you look at it from Putin and his oligarch friends, He is the one that needs to stop democracy from infecting his country. How did this start? I don't know. How did this start? Donetsk and Luhansk requested Russian help, them stop attacks against their civilians. That's probably true. I don't disagree with that. But if that was the only thing he was doing, why didn't he just roll up on the territory on the eastern end of Ukraine? Like, why didn't he, like, if he wanted a limited war, so we're talking about like a fast surgical strike, we're gonna beat the enemy. Why didn't he just keep all his troops around Luhansk and Donetsk? Why is there troops coming up from Crimea? They don't need to do anything, right? And you're right. So actually, that is a really good point. Just say up yours, okay? That he talks about the Minsk agreement. So earlier on, I babbled about stuff, and I said that the Ukrainian side was being intransigent. They were refusing to compromise. The Russians are the ones that said, "Look, what we were agreed to was the Minsk agreement, and security for the people in the east." So I don't dispute that's part of Putin's justification. That's not part of his. I agree that that's part of his objectives, but that is not the whole objective here. Let's face it this way: if you had only 60,000 troops to send into a country, like you were limiting your exposure, your risk, why the hell would you fling them in 4 different directions all over the map? Like, if you wanted to cut out and cut a buffer zone, which, I mean, I can understand, then you have to do it where the buffer zone is. Why the hell are you attacking Kyiv? Why are you making your fast attack aircraft and your helicopters fly all different directions all over where there's enemy air defense? Right? So trust me, it's not all, that's an oversimplification.
I just wanted to mention to this Tarzan Turkey here. I'm hearing myself again there.
Sorry, I'll back up.
Okay. Anyways, about this, to me, I mean, you can answer this as well there, David, if you want, but I'm just off the top of my head. I'm thinking that actually, because of a lot of the people, especially, Ukraine being basically a lot of close relationship and former part of the former Soviet republics and people that would identify even themselves, especially, like I say, on the eastern part of Ukraine, of actually, kind of Russians themselves, or very close to the Russian family. So it wouldn't make sense strategically for Putin to cut off power supplies and communications for people. Like, you don't want to create enemy out of the people. You want to create enemies out of the what he's terming the fascists in charge of the Ukrainian government. It just would not be wise strategically to just Agreed. And even with the gas thing, you don't want to freeze like all Ukrainians out, because it might turn them against you, right? So
I think that's what he's done. Right. If there are Russian speakers, Russian genetic people picking up arms, I know that. Oh, you talking to us? I know that.
I assume I knew. Yeah. I know that. I think.
Okay. He's not doing a soft entry. This is not a soft entry. No, I'm sorry. The second you invade a country, you are suffering every consequence that they give back at you. That's not what you don't look. This isn't just the tip. This is, you go into a country, you're at war, and it doesn't matter. So let's stop my little diatribing and let me add another fact. The majority of the Russian military is nowhere near Ukraine. It is on the western border of Russia and Belarus to stop NATO attack or NATO counterattack. No general on earth would recommend we put all our troops going into the Ukraine and leave nothing to protect Mother Russia, even in winter. So this is a limited war. He has proven that by only restricting it to 60,000 troops. And he has never put enough in. Let's go back one step further. Let's go back to like 5-6 days ago before Putin pulled the trigger on this whole exercise. What's the one way he could have defeated the Ukrainians without losing a single soldier? without one soldier being killed. Nuclear weapon.
Well, yeah, that would be a bad move.
I'm not saying it's a good move, but what I'm saying is that it demonstrates his intent and his actions are very clear. Yeah. So he could have just nuked the Ukraine and then said, NATO, stay out of the way, or you're going to get nuked next. And what would we have done? We'd have been like, okay, I guess we're playing it your way, because who wants a nuclear war? Mm-hmm. Yes, and then that's another one. The Clintons and the Bidens and all their money from Russia, from Ukraine. It's obvious that they're in the corruption zone of the entire country, right? I mean, that they're the ones that have, Ukraine thought it could buy U.S. protection, right? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, there was another thing that we haven't actually touched on as of yet. But like I say, I'm enjoying. I enjoyed your presentation. I'm enjoying all this great information. But once again, and the good thing about that is it gets me thinking about a lot of aspects. And the one area and one aspect that I think is going to play a not just a key role in this conflict, but while on the other side of it. And once again, this is not me talking about anything in terms of investment advice or anything, but you got to think right now that cryptocurrencies, especially with the constant threat, right, with the SWIFT, the removal of Russia from the SWIFT payment system. And this is the thing that people have to take into account these days. And I'm glad that more and more people are getting on board with learning what the underlying structure of these cryptocurrencies are, which is the blockchain. The blockchain technology is more than just a means to transfer cash. It's also a means to create smart contracts. It's also a means to completely remove that intermediary, what you would use a system such as SWIFT for, right? So if Russia wants to sell oil and gas to China or Iran or anywhere, they don't have to use the U.S. hegemony. They don't have to use the U.S. dollar. They don't have to worry on relying on the SWIFT payment system. There are now methods, and you got to be assured that these people are definitely going to be ramping up. They're already adopters of some cryptocurrencies for nefarious purposes, or for even to avoid sanctions from other countries. But once again, now that you're seeing this taking place in real world with this kind of conflict and these threats that are coming out from the West, like I say, I think it's going to, at the end of the day, push more and more people, and not just Russia or China, but more and more people to these kind of decentralized platforms. So as much as there's definitely negative consequences and it's detrimental, and I definitely don't promote or tout getting into any conflict, I'm also seeing slight inklings that there might be something good that may come out of this on the other side of it, of course, right? And I'm not, once again, not demeaning or lowering the fact that there's people that are going through some really, really hard times in Ukraine and during that conflict right now. But like I say, it's showing that there is the potential to escape these systems. Now, I'm not saying that I would necessarily want Russia to avoid having to, be punished for doing their terrible deeds or whatever. But I'm saying it's showing to the world there are ways to escape these kind of sanctions by the state. That's all I wanted to bring to that part of it, anyways.
Well, and it's interesting because economic warfare.
Yeah,
there is such a thing as economic warfare, and what is the IMF? What do all these trade embargoes and sanctions do? They punish a country for having a government that the United States doesn't agree with, or can't control, or can't push around.
Yep.
So that's the reality of the situation. So freedom becomes a real question of whether or not you are willing to take your money out of the system that they can use. So you're basically saying the same argument in reverse. Do you want to allow the government to keep using your tax dollars,
right,
your value, as a means to crush other people in other parts of the world?
Exactly. That's the thing, and that's what we've seen, especially after Nixon severed the gold standard, and a lot of countries like the U.S. would have never made those kind of what's the word I'm looking for? But they wouldn't have came to the determination to whether it's the conflict in Afghanistan or invading Iraq or some of these other hornets nests that they've been playing around with. If you literally had to, if you were constrained to actually the finances that were actually available to you. This is the problem with all these debts and deficits and fiat currencies is all these authoritarians, these power hungry control freaks around the world. They use the fact of not just taxation and as a means to pay for these, but the power of inflation as well, right? Which has been greatly enriching. I mean, I heard reports that basically Russia had been stockpiling, right? And I mean, that's the thing. When you got a central bank, right, you can just stockpile like literally, mountain full of cash if you want, which is what someone did. And it was someone that I can't remember who it was exactly, but basically they had a kind of idea of what was taking place over there. And basically said that Russia and the oligarchs have a stockpile of cash, even without using cryptocurrencies, that could get them through upwards of a year of this conflict. So, I mean, once again, that just shows once again, what kind of effect are you going to have with your SWIFT payment system when, once again, central banks for all these countries around the world, they just turn on the printing press. And as we've seen, just like in Western powers, when you're worried about your inflation, happening so close to home, there's also ways to export that inflation to different jurisdictions around the world, right? And spread that pain around. This is the problem with these central planners and having these kind of fiat currencies. And it definitely plays a key role in these conflicts because nobody would make that kind of measurement, whether it's economically or strategically, if you didn't have the money to pay. You're not going to choose, think about it. You're not going to choose to invade a country. It's like, okay, the best case scenario is it's going to cost $2 trillion. Meanwhile, we only got $500 billion, right? That changes your calculation, right? But if you can just arbitrarily make up that $1.5 trillion, well, now it changes the calculation once again.
Ask, would somebody do that with their own pocketbook?
Exactly.
Or if we said to everybody, you have to pay for the war from the Republican GOP fund, or you have to pay for your war from the Democrat, whatever. Mm-hmm. Hey, look who's talking crazy here.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So they always make you pay for it, whether you want to or not.
Exactly.
And you're 100% correct that, if you really want freedom and autonomy, why would you put your assets in their hands? Because they don't give a shit if you lose your money.
Nope.
They want to use your money and then tell you what a great job they did. And then go on speaking tours and get paid $500,000 to go and say some bullshit for half an hour. And everybody claps. Oh, yay, Obama. Oh, yay, Trump. You guys are wonderful. Yeah, well, did you see the mess he just left?
Yeah, really.
A lot of this problem with Ukraine is Obama's fault. And Merkel and let's be honest here. And do we actually hold them to account and say, listen, you and your policies caused all this stuff. And if you, I'll link it at the end, but that Mearsheimer guy says we led Ukraine down this path. In his talk, and he's a political science professor, he recommended that what we should have done is neutralize Ukraine, make Ukraine like Switzerland, take its weapons away, or have it just a small border force, and it's not allied to the West, it's not allied to Russia, it's just its own little nation, and that would have solved it from being this tug of war prize between two warring factions.
Yeah. I'm just looking at your list here. And so avoiding democracy infecting Canada. Well, that's the one thing I will actually say is I'm not a fan of any of the other forms of tyranny, but democracy is something that doesn't actually give me the greatest feelings inside either. Sounds good. Like I said, many times I use this expression, but it sounds good as a bumper sticker, but once you take any actual, deep thoughts about these things, like a democracy, basically the majority, the mob rule is not. I'm not a big fan of that either. Matter of fact, I've heard a lot of people, and tell you the truth, once again, I just don't believe in having any rulers. But I've heard people are really articulate and done in a really good job about the fact that actually even monarchs in some technical aspects are even superior to a democracy. And if you think about it, just just if a monarch, so they claim that they own that country, right? And I mean, just like you as a person, if you own your home, you have a much more incentive to want to take care of it. Whereas if you're only renting it for a few years or a few days, like, that rental car you got, it's like doing a neutral drop, right? It's like you wouldn't do that in your brand new Mercedes that you just paid 60 grand for, but you might with some rental car, right?
No, you wouldn't.
This is the problem with democracies, I see. But once again, this is not me advocating for any other form of entertainment.
No, I mean, they argue that an enlightened dictatorship is the best form of government. But who the hell are we going to elect to that?
Exactly, yeah.
Right?
I just don't have enough faith in any specific individual or group of individuals to actually give anyone that much power. That's my thought processes, right?
I agree. I
just don't trust any human. I trust to a certain degree. Like I say, I'm not one of those people who are just infinitely pessimistic and disgruntled or fear of everyone around me. I think people can be good, bad, and anywhere in between. I really, at the end of the day, it comes down to is what are incentivized? How are people incentivized? Because the natural incentive is that we all want to get through life, and we all recognize the best way to do that is to not create situations that's going to bring about more harm to you. That's going to happen anyways, but the more times you create situations or scenarios where there's potential harm come your way. So that's why I think most of us at least try to attempt to get along with each other, even with people we disagree with. But once again, the problem with democracy or anything like these, where you have this pretense of giving certain people this much power to control others, is it automatically incentivizes, first of all, right? Even let's say, first of all, it's the good people that want to gravitate to these positions. Well, because it's a position of power and authority, right, that reaps great riches or rewards at other people's expense. The kind of people who are eventually going to gravitate to that are the worst among us. And that's what we're seeing today. That's
psychopaths.
Yeah.
Narcissists.
Yeah. Canada only took 150 some years. It took a little longer in the US because they had a better constitution. But here we're seeing, some of the greatest ideas and concepts in terms of giving people the freedoms have completely almost upended to the point where it's hard to recognize the difference between the West and the East these days, right? That's the problem with giving people the pretense of authority over you. That's the thing. And when people say, "Oh, what are you going to do? Get rid of government tomorrow?" What people don't realize when I talk and I try to clarify it for them is it's all in your head. If you believe in having rulers, right, you're going to have rulers. But if you have a citizenry of people who do not believe in having rulers, but are very much in solidarity with each other in terms of having rules of engagement, how we deal with each other social, economically, that's much easier. But that only happens in the absence of government, right? The minute government, any form of government introduced, which is the monopoly of force or violence, well, everyone's going to clamor for or eventually want to take over and assume that kind of power, whether it's just out of greed or their sociopaths, or which many times it's out of fear that someone else is going to pick up that power and use it against them. That's why I say you take away that power entirely. You remove that from the mind of the human being, just like we did with slavery. If you remove the concept of having rulers, well, then just like now, could you imagine someone out there actually advocating today? What kind of politician? No, I don't care how good he is at being a snake oil salesman. I don't care how many times he's rehearsed his lines. You're not going to find any politician out there today that's going to get into that deep into the minds of humans today that are enlightened enough to realize that slavery is immoral. You're not going to have anyone that's going to be out there saying, we need modern slavery, right? That would never fly today. Just like we, at some point in time, I want us humans to advance our mindset to the point, or at least enough of us, we're just like when someone said, we need government to do this. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I know where you're going with that. And no thanks, right?
Well, let's break this down and be equally critical of the war hawks and the democracies right now.
Oh, I'm an equal opportunist. I insult all status of all kinds.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong. Like the whole point, like if you just join the conversation halfway through, the reason why we don't want anything but a democracy is so we can bitch and complain about it. Not taking everything for granted, that if you cannot speak your mind, you've got police that are going to come and take you out of your bed in the middle of the night. There was a guy here, Mr. Erickson / Canadian Libertarian. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much. You are most welcome. So let's talk about the what's going on. We have democratic nations in NATO that cannot attack inside Ukraine to cause this problem to exacerbate or bring us into it. People are saying, "Oh, we should be rushing in." I'm like, "Do you want to get nuked?" One of the first things Putin said was he's got his nuclear forces on red alert, like they're ready to like literally bomb a capital. And so some people are going, "Well, I'm really angry that they're killing Ukrainians." Fucking rights, I'm angry too, but you want to start nuclear war and now Estonia is gone? Like, have you actually thought through your actions? And the other one that is super dangerous and super scary to me, we talked about it earlier, they're giving Stinger missiles that you and I can't buy and purchase and own and operate on our own. They are giving anti-tank weapons because of the democracies and their outrage and the citizens saying, "Hey, we gotta do something." They are piling in like dangerous freaking weapons, heat rounds, like both a Stinger missile and an anti-tank weapon. They're heat rounds, high explosive anti-tank. They fire a charge which forms a molten jet so it can cut through heavy armor.
Right.
These things are not toys. They make an AR-15, an AR-10 look like a toy weapon. They will cut. Let me tell you, you can cut through an engine block with these things. These it's a concentrated blast, but you really are in trouble if this is coming through your car. And we're giving them to Ukrainians that have never fired one of these things before. And where are the grown-ups going? Are you out of your effing mind?
Yeah.
And the other thing, so we wouldn't, the other thing they were talking about is a no-fly zone. We should impose a no-fly zone. Okay, well, now the Russians are shooting our planes out of the sky. Well, what happens when a Stinger missile downs a Russian helicopter?
Yeah.
Are we responsible? Are they going to attack us? You want to give them more heavy weapons?
Yeah. And actually, tell you the truth, when you're talking about those things, especially the missiles, because I remember it's probably been a couple months now, but in addition to going up from the S-3 to the S-400 in terms of their missile defense and stuff, but they actually have they've been working on, and I believe in the world, unless, like I say, I don't keep on top of this stuff, but I remember the last thing I heard about it was actually they were basically superior to anyone else on the planet right now in terms of their advanced development of hypersonic missiles, which can evade a lot of these missile defense systems that the West has used, like the Patriot missiles, or what's the one that they use over in Tel Aviv that really
the Iron Dome.
Yeah, the Iron Dome, right? So, and those are really advanced systems as well. But apparently, these hypersonic missiles are very, very much able to elude some of these slower moving defensive missile systems. So yeah, like playing these games, this is the thing. A lot of people are playing. This is not a video game, right? Like, we're talking about a very, very serious situation. And I got to point out as well, and I'm sure everyone that's watching this and you too, Dave, has heard people saying, how in the hell is it that these media pundits, at least you or I, well, you're talking, like I say, in a wheelhouse house that you are informed on. I am claiming ignorance by the fact that I just don't know. So but here we got these same political pundits, right, are now apparently all experts on foreign conflict, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't even figure out how to get us through 2 years of a virus that had basically a 99% survival rate, but yet we're supposed to rely on their expertise now.
Agreed.
In terms of, like, come on, folks, it's one difference when you're fighting a battle against a virus that, like I say, 99% survival rate. But now you're talking about entering into a potential conflict with one of the major superpowers of the world. This is not, like you say, this is not the time to be playing games or trying to chalk political points or get viewerships or clicks by saying some really, really stupid things. That's the one thing I am a little bit worried about today is the media, because they've gotten so many of our institutions and countries in trouble as it is I worry more for what these idiots in the media and these politicians who are so inept, and have none of them, including myself, but I would never be in the position they're in, but who've never even experienced genuine conflict on a scale that you would see if this kind of takes place. You're
Yeah.
talking about people who are 50, 60, 70 years removed from anything even remotely resembling that. And like I say, to me, the most important thing they can do is shut the fuck up, sit down, and actually let the adults speak for once, for crying out loud. Because if you don't, yeah, even you people are going to really, really regret the stupidity that you bring to the table.
So somebody asked, does Erickson know what China has? Do you know that I have a top secret, a NATO top secret clearance?
Nice.
So if I told you, I literally would have to kill you. So you come see me at my house and I'll explain everything to you. Just stand on the floor where it says target.
Another thing, actually, I wanted to bring up there too, Dave, get your thoughts on this, because I actually, once again, and this is me, it's pretty bad. I got to preface and let me put up my disclaimers here. Yeah, I have admiration for some of the things that Trump did when he was the president of the U.S. I'm not a like a blindly loyal Trump acolyte or anything like that, but I got to say, at the very least, I seen how he was his art of the deal and how he was negotiating and playing the strong man. And actually, that's the thing with Trump. He doesn't really actually play it. The man, it almost seems to exude that. Like, that's just him. That's by fault. He's just seemingly got more balls than brains, it almost seems at times, right? And is willing to just speak. So, but I've seen so many people pointing out, and I got to tell you, I agree with this. I don't know if you do or not, but I firmly believe, and of course, this is hyper speculation because who's to know, right? But I firmly believe myself that if Trump was still in power in the United States, I think Putin would have been a little bit, a lot more hesitant to try and do this. I think there would have been some backdoor negotiating, some backdoor deals. A whole lot of things happened, behind the scenes that might have potentially alleviated any potential for conflict and maybe figure out something that gave everybody involved, the West, the Ukraine, and Russia, enough where they could all walk away from the table feeling like, okay, yeah, I can deal with this. I believe that was what Trump would have been able to bring to the table. I don't know about your thoughts on that, but
that's an excellent point, because if nobody is discussing diplomacy, where's the climb down?
Exactly.
Where's the climb down for the both sides so they can save some face, tell their people this is the deal, like you like it or lump it, and this is the way things are going to be. Because, so one of the things I talked about was Clausewitzian escalation on my Twitter feed. So what that means is this. Clausewitz, in his book on war, he explains how two countries at war, there's two planes. There's a physical plane, like where your guns are, and the moral plane, like where your heads are. Okay.
Right.
And one nation attacks the first nation and is blunted. Right. He doesn't get. They don't get through. They don't defeat the enemy, and they are reasonably civilized. They're sort of going by the Geneva Convention, all that sort of stuff. Their attack doesn't work. So then the nation that was attacked attacks backwards, and they're a little more savage. They're a little more, ruthless, and they kill more civilians and so on. And so what he talked about is it becomes like this escalation, one over the other. Every time it doesn't work, the attack the other way is more vicious, more violence, and causes more problems. Well, imagine if you're stuck as Putin and you've got 60,000 minus 4,000 Russian troops in Ukraine. How the hell do you get them home? They will be surrounded by Ukrainians who have 200,000 troops. So there has to be a climb down here for Putin. There has to be some face saving. There has to be a rational way, or he's got no choice than nuke it. And I'm not saying that because I'm a warmonger or not. I've been to a war zone. I know war is hell. Don't wish it on you or your children or anyone. We should not have politicians that are still using war as the way to get themselves out of their own stupid goddamn problems with our money. At this day and age, for God's sakes, have we not learned anything from the last century? Okay, the reason why what's that saying in vis pacem parabellum in Latin, vis pacem parabellum. If you want peace, you prepare for war. Putin is exactly the kind of guy that will beat you with a stick if you're not looking. He's exactly the kind of guy that will steal a ring off your finger. Like, go look this up. He stole a ring off an NFL.
Yeah, I remember hearing something.
You remember that?
Yeah.
He stole a ring and walked away.
Yeah.
He'll take your lunch money and rub your nose in the dirt. That's the kind of guy that he is. So knowing that, do you really want to give him no diplomatic way to climb down from this, a negotiated peace, so he has like, fuck it, I'm going to die. They're going to kill me. The oligarchs, for losing them all the money, are going to kill me. So what do I care if I make half of Ukraine glass?
Yeah.
What do I care? I'll be dead anyways, right? So we really need the grown-ups in the room to start recognizing, look, we have to be ready for the entire thing, not just in the flurry of activity and panic and emotion, all just jump in and do stupid shit. Giving people that don't know what they're doing some of the most dangerous weapons on the planet. NATO isn't giving them a way out. Yeah, because people are angry. But who's the grown-up in the room going, look, guys, we all want to support the Ukrainians, but we also don't want Russian soldiers killed.
Actually, the best way you can support Ukrainians right now is to try to tamp down the fucking flames of conflict. That's the biggest, like you say, you need to, and I'm glad, like I say, and maybe when we're done the stream, I'll try to, get my caught up to speed and see what's going on in terms of the negotiations or the potential for negotiations. Because that to me is not getting into this, playing this, and this is a thing that drives me nuts with not just Canadians, but so many people these days with this goddamn binary thinking of whether it's the Leafs or Canadians or the Liberals or the Conservatives or the Democrats or the, forget about that, or Ukraine or Russia. Forget about playing these fucking sides. At the end of the day, you're talking about human beings.
Yes.
Whether you're talking about Russians or Ukrainians, they're human beings. And to be honest with you, if they didn't wear a patch or a flag on their chest and two of them were standing right the hell in front of you today, you wouldn't know the difference between the two of them. So quit playing stupid games with this, my flag or this or this country or that country is. No, you want to, like Dave's suggesting, and what I would agree with 100% wholeheartedly, is to figure out to have the right kind of people in these positions to be able to negotiate some form of peace. And like I say, nobody, and that's the thing with negotiated peace, is nobody's going to be able to walk away from the table in a zero-sum game where I won and you lose. The only way that peace thing properly works, and I mean, World War I and World War II was proof of that. The reason why World War II even took place was because if you go too heavy, because of
the Treaty of Versailles, because what we screwed the Germans with.
Yeah, it's one thing to defeat your enemy, but then if after you've defeated them and you're sticking your finger, poking your fingers in their eye, right, and treating them like garbage, that's not going to work out, because then you get that rise. That's why the people of Germany were willing to allow someone like Hitler to rise to power, right? There was already that anger and resentment. That was already there to grow and grow and go. And all he had to do was just add the flames to that kind of fire. And that's all it took. And that's the same with today. There's so much division taking place. And like I say, people need to stop playing this game, because if you keep playing this binary game where it's a zero-sum one, where there's going to be a winner or a loser, we're all going to lose. Because Russia, once again, it's not just Russia, Ukraine. We, as Western people, Russia contributes, I think it's 90% of some of those rare minerals that are used in a lot of those electronic devices we use today, and the chips and stuff. And,
rare earth metals.
And well, there's a specific gas too. I was reading it in something there about a week ago, where it's a specific kind of gas that's used for in some of our electronic devices or whatever. Not argon, I don't know, some kind of gas. Anyways, but it's like I say, Russia supplies 90% of it. And this is the thing, like we all rely, the world. Now, I'm not for globalism, but I definitely agree with global trade. And we rely on a lot of like places and countries all around the world, or not countries, but businesses all around the world, to supply us with the things that give us all the monitored and amenities that we take advantage. So even some of the people who are like, say now, let's destroy Russia. Well, once again, that'll have a reflection on your own society, and it's not going to really help Ukrainians out, right? No, what you need to do is, like I say, get to the point where you have the proper people in charge, where you're taking force off the table by offering them alternative methods or means to get what they all want. That's what needs to be done. And you need someone like I don't know if it's a Trump or someone else, but Trump at least seems to be that kind of guy that has those negotiating skills.
He's
Right?
some of it. Some of it is
Yeah, right,
him. Some of
right,
it is
right.
luck.
That's true.
Some
That
of
is
it.
true.
Some of it's he's got good people working for him. But
That's
I'll
true. Yeah.
answer. Just
Yeah.
say up yours point here that I am a NATO warmongering thug organization. I don't know if you were attending the last chat me and Ben had, but I presented myself as a candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. And my policy number one is to hold what do you call that? A referendum on pulling helium-3. That's what he was saying, Bennett. Helium-3. My first policy is pulling Canada out of NATO, because NATO doesn't serve the purpose that it was designed for in 1945. So that's how I'm not a warmonger. If the Canadian public is so okay with spending 1% of our GDP on NATO commitments when we've promised to spend 2%, and everyone's okay with that, then clearly nobody wants to be in NATO. So why be in an organization convincing people like the poor Ukrainians that there's a salvation coming? This NATO, this magical NATO is going to come and save us from the Russians. No one gives a shit. Well, I give a shit. That's why I'm talking. If I already know this stuff, I could use this for my advantage. The reason why I'm here explaining this to people is so when you understand why things went the way they did, and you go, gee, there was that guy, and he like mentioned that this is actually what this is about, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah. And it wouldn't hurt for Canada to adopt more policies, and of course the U.S. Although that's the thing with the U.S. being the world's hegemony and having the dominant currency and all this stuff, is it's going to take a little bit more for them. But what would be so wrong, anyways? That's the thing I hear, especially a lot of the people on the left, how they constantly praise a lot of the Nordic countries, and we always see countries like Switzerland that finish straight up there at the very top in terms of prosperity and happiness and all that stuff. So what would be a bad thing, anyways, for Canada to adopt more Switzerland type policies where, yeah, we're willing to trade, we're willing to do anything with any country in the world. Well, but when it comes to getting involved with conflicts or government to government cozy relationships and propping certain regimes up to others, why can't we avoid that kind of circumstance? Like I said,
exactly.
Canada isn't really, to me, it's not really a proper position for Canada. Anyways, we're not one of the world's dominant powers. Now, we definitely punch above our weight, no doubt about that. And Canadians have definitely contributed, in many areas in the past. But once again, as I've watched over the course of not just my life, but even hearing from like my parents and grandparents, is as we've been constantly, or not necessarily me, but people that came before us have been fighting for the freedoms in some of these foreign countries, whether you're talking about in Europe or in the Middle East, is look at how terrible. And this actually brings me to the old Jordan Peterson mindset. Can we worry about cleaning up our own goddamn rooms or our own backyards before we start trying to export? Like, that's the thing. Well, we going to export what kind of a fucking dysfunctional democracy are we going to export to Ukraine? Trust me, Ukraine, you don't want nothing to do with this shit, right? So like,
where are those 7 trillion trees that Justin Trudeau promised to plant?
Yeah, really. Right?
I don't see them.
Yeah. No. Canada's definitely got to. Yeah, we got to worry about at home. We got so many problems and so many issues.
So let's tie in. So let's tie this back to Trump and the USA.
Okay.
There's the myth, and I don't care what you Americans think of me. I'm allowed to have this opinion. There's this myth of American exceptionalism, that there's something extra special about how the US does whatever. And of course, Trump, when he's on the hustings trying to get people, we're going to make America great again. Wink, wink, great. And of course, you got one set of people going, oh, that means he's a Nazi. And other people saying, wait, he's going to bring us back to the South and like segregation and shit like that. Well, he doesn't tell you what the great is. He lets your little mind fill in the detail about what that means. So as long as you vote for him, he doesn't give a shit, right? So if we have people that are so dumb who don't appreciate how they're being flim-flammed, and I'll tell you, if you want to look at Canadian politics, the person that is most like Trump in Canada is Trudeau. He's all talk and no walk. The guy is a has-been that never was. He's done nothing with his life. He was a ski instructor. Great job, buddy. But he's not accomplished something. So can you imagine being some foreign dignitary, like a president of, a prime minister of Japan? You control 130 million people and some of the biggest technology and all this stuff, and you got to listen to Trudeau meander about people kind and how we got to worry about representation of bisexual people or something, and they're sitting there going like, who the fuck is this jackass and why the hell is he talking? Like, when we have leaders that aren't serious, do you honestly think other leaders take them seriously? Do you honestly think Trudeau can get anything done anywhere? Right? So when you have voters that don't seem to realize that, do you think the country will go in the right direction? And if it isn't going in the right direction, why the hell isn't it going in the right direction? Well, you elected a clown, and now you've got a circus. So if you like sound bites and token gestures and my big complaint, virtue signaling is cheap marketing. Mm-hmm. It is the way to get dumb people to believe you for 5 seconds, look up from their phone and go, oh, what's going on? Oh, gee, he stands with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter was like burning down buildings and wrecking Black-owned businesses and stuff. I wouldn't call that a positive for North America. But if you like the feels and don't really care about the reals, then Trudeau's your guy. Yeah. And what do you get out of this? Say something bad about Biden. Okay. Joe Biden is an ice cream-addled dementia patient on life support from whoever pulls his strings to say whatever he's told by Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or whatever crazy nutball idea AOC has up her sleeve. He literally, he knows if the lid comes off the box of the criminal enterprise he's done, he's a dead man. So he is the world's biggest captive. He is a captive of his own past. He's a captive of his politics. He's a captive of he talks about Black Lives Matter. And then he says, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry. So he's for Black Lives Matter because some crazy person on the left tells him he has to be. The guy he's not all there. And you want to talk about scary shit? How about the nuclear football in the lap of Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden? If that doesn't give you nightmares, I don't think you're paying attention. Oh, the phone. Where's the phone? The guy wakes up, he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know if it's the 1970s. Say something bad about Black Rock.
Well, actually, the hedge fund. I just wanted to mention something there, Dave, too, is because we haven't really touched on this yet, but this is something that kind of, in my mind, since this whole conflict too with Russia is because I like to do this thing. I don't know. I seem to be pretty good at putting myself. Obviously, I can't physically do it, but try to put myself into a different mindset where I'm challenging my own perspective and stuff. And I seem to have a pretty good knack for it. Or thinking outside of the typical things I would typically ways I would think of it. I was thinking, so in terms of Russia or any foreign threat to the West, if you take the culmination, because like I say, I like to think things at the macro level and the whole focus of everything. And I think not just in the last few years, but definitely the last few years in particular, but you've had this, whether it's the SJW brigades, the feminism, the LGBTQ pushes, basically the way the political class has divided people is along such strange lines, and the people that they target, who they would concede to be the binary opposite, which is so weird about all these things, how they create where these arbitrary dividing lines. But the typical people that these establishment politicians, whether you're talking about in the US or Canada, like Barack Obama, Biden down there, with all these agendas and critical race theory and all this craziness, it seems to me, and if you're a foreign entity or someone like Putin, right, and you've watched this played out for all these years, it's basically you've watched this country, that's your arch enemy, let's say, right, that is now thoroughly beaten down their own people who would be the typical kind. Because if you think of the kind of people that they call these right wingers today, right, those are predominantly a lot of the people who would join the military, right? People with Christian heritage, conservatives, people who were raised in Christian conservative families, right? These are the typical people, and I've got a few of them in my family and people that I've known and worked with. That's predominantly where they come from. We're all, like I say, being treated like second-class citizens, berated, derided, had their economic prosperities destroyed and all this stuff. So you've basically never, first of all, they never flattened the curve for COVID, but they sure flattened any competent ability for the West to mount a good defense, because not only have they beaten down the kind of people who would be the defenders of the West, but they've placed them in such a terrible position that I don't know if they would even want to, because that's the thing. I think about it. So let's say I was the typical grunt, right? And the typical grunt and your typical, that maybe most of the people in your household or family are conservative oriented and just loathe people like Trudeau. And I'm telling you, that represents a lot of the military, right? Well, where's the leadership? Where's that? To me, the people that want to follow leaders, the way that happens, and the reason why people will put down, their farming tools and pick up weapons, is because their leader inspires them, not because a leader and actually the best people you have that will fight for you are the ones that are inspired by your leadership. Because like you say, the conscripts, the people that you force to fight, they don't work out too well as a
conscripts are crap.
Exactly.
They're basically like disposable soldiers.
Right.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm seeing the West here in 2022, like I say, is in probably the worst shape, like even economically, right? I mean, terrible shape economically. Morale has been beaten down. We're divided. Like I say, the kind of people who would typically pick up arms for defense of freedoms and liberty are all, like I say, disgruntled and either not in the proper mindset, or, like I say, wouldn't even want to follow the kind of leadership we have in this country. I tell you, this is a terrible, terrible situation for the West to be in. And it's really important that we get beyond this willy-nilly bickering over right and left. And like I say, at the very least, Canada needs some competent people in these positions of authority. Once again, not advocating for it, but because that those positions do exist, we need properly competent people. So
check fire.
Go ahead.
Check fire. Okay, yeah. I want to get to David from, I assume he's from Texas, because that looks like half of Texas.
Oh yeah, Texas.
Yes, I know where the hell Texas is.
Yeah.
Anyways, I want to get to his comment. You can't sum up all Americans in a box like that. There's only two selected to choose from, and Democrats are full-blown communists these days. It seems American politics is more interesting, though. Yeah, it's totally interesting. I totally agree. Now, let me explain to you how much I understand American politics. Number one, I predicted Trump would win. And number two, I'm going to explain to you the liberal shtick. This is the way that liberals win elections in the United States. Oh, okay. So the liberal shtick is this. You want to pretend to care. You want to get people sideways convinced that you really, really care about the people and their goals, their hopes, their dreams, their ins, their outs, their kids, their grad. So this is what you do. The shtick is you find a minority group. that doesn't have the full weight of just treatment in the eyes of everyone. Right now, it's minorities, women. They're starting to go towards pedophilia. They find a downtrodden group and they expose the unfair treatment of this group that really, really needs to have some sort of just treatment from society. You can't trample on him and his rights anymore. He wants to marry his toaster. Let him marry his toaster. It's outrageous that the Republicans refuse to allow this man to marry his toaster. And they get to sound all woke and they get to sound all caring and they pretend to care. And the process of demanding justice for some small group, right? We must do things, it can't be like this. The best guy at the whole liberal shtick is Bernie Sanders. Why is it that the CEO of BlackRock makes 907 trillion times the average of a Subway employee making your sandwich? This is an outrage. It is 2022. Dude has no idea how to fix that problem. Zero. But he has shown you through the vigor of his emotion how unfair and outrageous it is that in this day and age, this group is being slighted by the majority. How dare you? And then what they do is they sit on it and they don't do, NATO is pretending to care. I agree. It's become a shell of what it was. So they get a whole bunch of people hooked on this idea that the only people that care about you and your problems are the ones that care about Bill here and his toaster. You can't trust the Republicans. They are evil and they will take your life and they will take your home and they don't care about Bill and his toaster. And then they sit in government and do sweet fuck all to help Bill and his toaster. Zero. For an entire term.
I'm just going to go right off it. Just want to make one short statement here because I think this was absolutely amazing about this whole thing with the Russia conflict. And actually, even the Emergencies Act to a degree, with those two things that happened subsequently to each other, is apparently COVID's gone, everyone.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that hey, at least we can rejoice in the fact that all the central planners, the control freaks, and the media mouthpieces, they're all distracted now, right? With these other things. And now apparently COVID this is what I mean. This is how, it should be a wake-up call to anyone out there when you see this stuff, how quickly these media personalities and pundits will quickly shift and pivot. One day they're basically pretending like they're trying their best to even try to get a tear to fall on screen. And they just care so much about you as Canadians that they just want to protect you for your own health. And then the minute there's something else that distracts them, it's like that, that meme with the hot chick and walk by. And they're like, oh, look over here. So do they really care about you? Do they really? Or is it, like I say, they have a narrative, they have a goal in mind, and it suits their particular preferences. So I'll go with it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. The point I'll use, sorry, I'll back up so I'm not reverberating. So the example I'll use is Obama. Obama was for gay marriage. I think we called it at the time, right? And Bush and it was Romney, Republicans, they would never be for marriage for anything other than a man and a woman, right?
Well, actually, can I say something real quick before we continue on there about that?
Yeah.
Actually, when it comes to that stuff, I remember when that issue was taking place, and maybe you might even be able to expand on your thoughts on that, is a simple way that would have alleviated this, because it was another very wedged type issue that had people very much politically divided. And to me, it was so simple. Don't call it a fucking marriage. Just call it whatever, anything else you want to call it, where if two guys or two girls want to get together so that the government can legally plunder them in a better, more efficient way, right? then by all means do it. Call it a civil union if you want.
Yes.
But to me, the fact that they were willing to double down on the use of that very specific term marriage that comes from a very specific Christian, aspect where the church was involved, not the state, right? The fact that they were willing to keep hammering away at that, to me, it was like, yes, they were definitely using that as a wedge issue for the sole purpose and intention of not to help the LGBT community, but to once again create more of a divide. It's just part of that same divide tactic. That's what it was. That's it, right?
Yeah. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all bullshit, right? Yeah. So the story I want to start off with or finish off with is this. So Obama ran on gay marriage, right? And of course, the Republicans, wedge issue, thought, well, we'll just do the opposite. We'll go anti-gay marriage, right?
Yeah.
Your 3% titanium tax doesn't go far enough. Your 3% titanium tax doesn't go not far enough too much. It doesn't matter what it is. You just want to take the opposite opinion.
Yeah.
Obama didn't approach fixing gay marriage until his second term.
Right.
5 years in. That's how much he cared about gay marriage. There were still unsanctified marriages with Obama for 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's the shtick. We care. We're there. Get used to us. So that's how much I know about American politics there, David. Stick that in your hat and smoke it.
Oh yeah, don't worry about, like I say. Anyways, that's the one thing I'll even I think Matt Dugas, a few of them in the chat, they'll definitely disagree with you. Now I will just say, guys, and you folks know in the chat, like, it does nobody any good to, like, you could get your point across without, and I'll admit I was guilty of it years ago too, of insulting people. I've tried to do a whole lot better, and I don't do that much anymore. And I just recommend to anyone, like I say, if you disagree with Dave, or just no need to bring in the extra.
No, it's okay. Listen, I can.
Oh, I know we can all handle it, but it's just
we can all handle it. I've been around so many high order detonations in Danger Close. There's not really much of my brains left, so it's all going to be like water off my back. Look, if I didn't mind receiving it, I wouldn't throw it.
Oh yeah, no, I know that. No, I'm not even, like I said, I'm not even saying that as to step up to your defense, because you could do that yourself. To me, it's just that whole thing, and a lot of the folks in the chat would probably already know where I'm going with this. Is just like with myself, I always try to raise myself to a fairly high bar or standard, especially when you're talking about like issues like this. And it's okay to joke around and mess around, poke around a little once in a while. But like I say, I don't know. I just what separates, I guess, my channel from a lot of other ones and the kind of people that I want to talk to and stuff is I don't want to get into just sensationalize them or constantly insulting or play. And I see even today, that's another thing I see today, a lot of people are gaining a lot more successes in terms of their viewership and growth on their channels or social media platforms, because they're willing to play this like shocking gotcha moment or and I get it, it works. But what I've also seen over the course of my time of watching how this plays out is every one of those, destroys your credibility slowly. Sure. Every time you play politics and you're just doing it for the purpose of politics, and that's easy to point out, then, like I say, people will get to the point where the only people who are going to follow you or want to pay attention to anything you say are, once again, people with that same kind of mindset where they just want to play political games. And that's not the kind of people I typically like to surround myself. Actually, most of the people that, join me for my streams or chats are really, really smart, well-articulated, and people that think deeply about issues. And I know these guys, even some of the guys that have tossed out a couple insults, are like that as well. So I get it. Everyone's frustrated.
I don't get it. I don't get offended at all.
No, for sure.
Here's what I would say as a rebuttal to all that stuff.
Yeah.
Wise people talk about concepts. Average people talk about events.
Mm-hmm.
And dumb people talk about other people.
Yeah, it's so true.
So if you want to get better, then you're going to focus on what's important. Like we're like delving into fundamental stuff, and worry less about the tit for tat and ad hominem attack. It doesn't help anyone. Yeah. And that's why I like talking on your show, because I agree. Like, if you want people to be grifters are going to grift. If you want people to be, you know, better informed, then you shouldn't get distracted by non-arguments, right?
That's true. But anyways, listen, this has been a really good live stream again. I'm really appreciate you coming on here and having this chat with me, Dave. But like I say, we've gone about 2 hours and 14 now. So if there's any other aspect of the Russian portion of this that you want to, just to tie things up, and like I say, we'll move on because I'm sure there's probably lots of other stuff that's going to come out in between now and before all this ends. So we might even want to come on and maybe discuss this further. But like I say, if you want, just for the sake of giving people the rest of the day to kind of get about doing their things.
Are you saying I'm boring people after telling you about ad hominem attacks?
No, definitely not. But I know myself, even like 2 and 3 hours, like I'm good for doing that. But I know I actually some days I feel bad that I go on these longs. I wish I was more efficient and was more efficient with the use of my time and my words.
It's okay. But here's the important thing. If you want to discuss a topic as complicated as a war, you can't do it in 30 seconds on CNN.
No, definitely.
What's the answer? Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Here's the weather.
Exactly. Yeah, no, for sure. No, but like I say, I really enjoyed this conversation because this Russia thing is something that's definitely in everyone's face. And you brought not just, perspective and opinions, but actually, analyzing like the strategy and the follies and some of the blunders or potential blunders that Putin might be making at this time. So like I say, I'm glad that you brought all that to the table. Like I say, it is something that everyone's got, it's in our face. You can't avoid it at this point in time. And nor should you really be trying to, because it will definitely have an effect on us. It's the thing. It is happening in a foreign country, but because we do live in a global world, all these things will have an effect on each and every one of us. But the most important thing for me, and I'm sure Dave would agree as well, is that we got to, rather than just blindly following some team A or team B narrative, is to just take the time to really think and dig into these issues. Be inquisitive, inquire other people. This is a time even for myself. I think I spent more time listening in this stream than I have talking, which is usually the other way around. But that's the thing. That's how I get to the point where I can be knowledgeable on subject, is by at least, when I know I'm not as knowledgeable as I'd like to be, is to step back and listen to other people and what they have to say, because that all helps advance my knowledge on these subjects. So thanks, Dave, for what you brought. Thanks for all the people in the chat.
You're most welcome. Can I just finish off for these guys? So there's somebody said, never finish the soft entry point. Well, I am Demon Dave on Twitter. I am on that thing every other minute and 5 minutes after I go to the bathroom. So Demon Dave on Twitter, like it says, you want to ask me a question about this stuff, I'd be happy to explain whatever babbling bullshit comes out of my mouth. But I want to make it clear that when I speak, I don't speak until I relatively know what I'm talking about. And if you understand that I'm 50 years old, I've seen lots of things, which is why I speak about them. When we're talking about other things that I don't know about, I will tell you right away. You got me. I don't know. So, yes, thank you again for your time. And, yeah, let's do this again sometime. Some other issue.
Right on. All right, everyone, you have yourself a great rest of this Sunday, right? Yeah. So the last little bit of the weekend, enjoy the last little bit of your weekend, folks, and you, Dave, as well. And I'll see everyone in the next live stream or video.
Thank you. I don't look a day over 20. 20 in the hole and 30 behind. Yeah, that's me. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. The Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty. Okay.